Drusilla was the one person in Rome Caligula trusted absolutely. She shared his blood, she shared his dreams, she shared his secrets. But now she was gone. Her death came swiftly, unexpectedly, and no one was more devastated than Caligula. One day she was fine, together with Lepidus, her new husband, dining with him, laughing, whispering, kissing his cheek before retiring to her new home. Then Drusilla fell deathly ill. Caligula rushed her back to the Palatium, ensconcing her in a suite of rooms, all her own, and giving her an army of servants to see to her every need. As she had done for him during his illness, Caligula never left her side, catering to her as he struggled desperately to nurse her back to health. But Drusilla did not recover. She was taken by a burning fever, or by poison, or by some nameless Roman god who had not yet learned who was now in charge. Devastated by her death, Caligula sealed the palace. Visitors were turned away. No senators were permitted, not at first. For 3 days the undertakers, known as the Libertinari, begged to be admitted, pleading for the emperor to allow them to begin the purification rituals before it was too late. Enraged and half-mad, Caligula drove them out. Even in death, Drusilla would remain his, alone. After the 3rd day, his tears exhausted and his face frozen, Caligula finally allowed Drusilla's body to be released to the Eustores, summoned to prepare her for cremation. But Caligula's grief had only just begun, and soon it would belong to all of Rome. Rome had waited without instructions. Her streets were silent, her tribunals abandoned, her temples full. In the Palatium, while the emperor remained enclosed with the body of his beloved sister, even the guards dared only the faintest of whispers. Then, after the Eustores removed Drusilla, Caligula emerged, calling for an immediate meeting of the Senate. There, before a packed house of anxious senators, Caligula delivered the decree: Rome must mourn. By imperial command, every statue in the city, from Julius Caesar himself to Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi, was to be veiled in black cloth. The altars of Rome's temples were to burn from dusk until dawn, their flames fed in mourning for the emperor's sister, a woman he honoured in death as an Augusta. During this period of citywide mourning, the Roman people were forbidden to bathe, and so all public baths were closed. While the imperial family grieved its devastating loss, the sound of laughter itself became a capital crime, punishable by death. For the first time in Rome's long and storied history, the mourning of a woman had become an obligation of state. Even the death of the Augusta had not demanded such public displays of grief. Parents were prohibited from dining with their children, or with each other, and husbands and wives were barred from sleeping together in the same bed. By command of the emperor, no person was permitted to indulge in pleasure or self-interest, only to contemplate the devastating loss of Drusilla, an imperial daughter of Rome. Such extreme grief was only appropriate, Caligula reasoned. Drusilla had been no mere wife, daughter, or sister. Divine blood ran through her. For this reason, Caligula stood before the Senate and urged the conscript fathers to grant divine honours to the great-granddaughter of Divus Augustus. And the Senate acquiesced without hesitation. Under the solemn title of Diva Drusilla Panthea, the Senate consecrated her to the gods. As the newest member of Rome's imperial cult, Panthea must now be worshipped by all. She stood before him, obedient, silent, uncertain of where she now belonged. Ennia Drusilla had risen high in the first bright days after Tiberius's death. Caligula had needed her, and her husband Macro, to ensure that the boy Gemellus, Tiberius's grandson, never touched the principate. And Macro had delivered. He secured the Praetorian Guard and bound their loyalty to the new Caesar. In return, Caligula promised him the prefecture of Egypt, and in the bargain accepted as Empress of Rome, Macro's wife. Now the bargain had come due. Ennia, Caligula said, his voice smooth and honeyed. "It is time we fulfill the contracts we made on Capri." He watched her eyes flicker, a quick nervous tremor. She did not know whether to believe him. "I understand," Caligula replied to the question her silence betrayed. "You have not shared my bed for some months. You thought yourself replaced by Drusilla, and now that she's gone, you imagine I have returned to you as a matter of convenience. But that is not so." Her brow tightened. A shadow crossed her face. Caution or distrust, or both? Caligula smiled. "Comparisons between Macro and Sejanus were being whispered," he said softly. "And of course you were cast, inevitably, as my Aunt Livilla, a woman whose busts and statues you will never see again, as they have been erased from the whole of the empire. Even my grandmother Antonia warned me against you. She did her best to dissuade me from any thought of marriage. And technically," he let the word linger, almost amused, "the lex Julia de adulteris coescendis, the law against adultery enacted by my great-grandfather, the divine Augustus, leaves you both open to prosecution. You, by your husband, and Macro, by the Senate, should he fail to prosecute you himself." He watched as her gaze steadied, her fear receding into a strange calm, the stillness of someone who was just beginning to understand. "Now," Caligula continued, "Rome views you as nothing more than a momentary dalliance of mine, a liaison from which I've moved on. And so long as the Senate believes that, they have no fear that I am being manipulated by Macro and yourself. Without that fear, they have no reason to prosecute Macro as a pimp." Caligula's tone shifted. "Now, it's time for Macro to take up his post in Egypt." Ennia's eyes widened, a hint of encouragement flashing across her face. "Aulus Avilius Flaccus," Caligula began, "the prefect of Egypt who allowed Alexandria to descend into chaos, has just been summoned to Andros, where he will answer for his crimes." Ennia said nothing. "Flaccus promoted violence in Alexandria," Caligula explained, as if she had asked. "Because he was friends with Tiberius, Flaccus thought himself untouchable. He sided with the Alexandrian Greeks against the Alexandrian Jews. He stood by when they crucified Alexandria's Jewish citizens. He looked the other way when they were burned inside their homes, even the children. And he did nothing when the Greek Alexandrians gathered the Judeans and stoned them to death in the gymnasium." Caligula sighed. "And of course, he did all this for Gemellus. It was my statue they were putting in the synagogues, offending them, turning the people against me." Caligula paused, then smiled again. "No matter. When Flaccus arrives in Andros for his trial, he will be found guilty, and he will be executed. As for Egypt, Macro will restore order in Alexandria, and then bring the East to heel. And you, my darling," he said, tilting his head with a faint smile, "will marry me, and remain here with your children, to make certain your ex-husband does not betray me." The hope in Ennia's expression faded. Her eyes fixed on his. "That was the contract, was it not?" He then kissed her on the cheek. "Now, off you go to Ostia," he said. "Say farewell to your husband, and let your sons say goodbye to their father." He held the daggers in each hand, one for Macro, one for Ennia. Caligula was finished with handlers, with political in-laws, with being manipulated. He was the emperor of Rome, not the Senate, not the praetorians, but he. Caligula handed the daggers to Cassius, the head praetorian of his household. "Send these to Ostia," he said. "Give them to Macro and Ennia, and tell them I have taken a new wife. They will know what is expected of them. As for the sons, bring them back to Rome. They are to fully inherit their father's estates, and they are to be treated as innocent." Placing a wreath of flowers upon his head, Caligula, followed by his guard, left the Palatium to get married. Her name was Livia Orestilla, young, beautiful, of impeccable lineage. When Caligula and his guard entered the house, all within fell to their knees. At the head of the room, her face draped in the traditional saffron wedding veil, sat Orestilla. Beside her stood Gaius Calpurnius Piso, the man she had just married. Piso was the grandson of Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso and Munatia Plancina, who 2 decades earlier had been found guilty of murdering Caligula's father. Both Orestilla and Piso appeared flustered. Then Piso recovered himself, bowing low. "We are honoured, Caesar, that you should attend our wedding celebrations." Caligula smiled. "Yes," he said. Then he turned to face the room full of guests. "In the tradition of Romulus and Augustus," he announced, loud enough for all to hear, "I have chosen to acquire a new wife." The room fell silent. All knew what that meant. The legends of how Romulus had seized the Sabine women to populate his new city, and how Augustus had taken his own wife from another man, forcing him to give her away at the ceremony as though he were her father. All eyes were fixed on Caligula, and on his Praetorian guard. Caligula reached his hand in front of Piso and offered it to Orestilla. Eyes locked with her husband's, slowly she raised a trembling hand and placed it in his own. Escorting her to stand before the room full of guests, Caligula raised his hand. "I present to you all my new wife, Livia Orestilla, Empress of Rome." He then led Orestilla past Piso, who stood looking at the floor. "Which way to the marriage bed?" he asked. As he led Orestilla from the room, Caligula shouted, "Where are the wedding cheers?" The silent guests eyed the Praetorians, who remained behind, with them. "Talasio," one of them whispered. Another joined, "Talasio." And soon the room was filled, the chant rising to the rafters. "Talasio! Talasio! Talasio!"